This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and I'm going to do my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. There is a lot of AEW news in the newsletter this week. Hello there, Duke. So I'll jump right into it, but I'll start with the WWE news as usual. And there was a lot of WWE news as well. SmackDown is happening tonight in St. Louis. It's a double taping since they're in Saudi Arabia next Friday. There's 7,500 tickets out right now. And apparently, Tenali Dashwood, who used to be Emma, is backstage. Sheamus got married. Oh, Viper, come here. Viper's here. Sheamus got married today in New York. Drew McIntyre was his best man. Congratulations to him. Apparently, they are going to be on SmackDown tonight, but they're going to miss the first day of the European tour, which includes McIntyre not appearing in Glasgow, Scotland tomorrow, which is where you think is the one place that he might make a difference. Ric Flair said he would love to return to the WWE. Apparently, he quit in August 2021 after he had an issue with Charlotte Flair's creative and got in a fight with Vince McMahon. And apparently, he was almost going to go to AEW to manage his son-in-law, Andrade, his third son-in-law. However, the Dark Side of the Ring thing aired and killed that. But WWE is now doing a documentary on him. So that might open the door for him to come back. And he always does pop a rating. And he's one of the greatest ever. So he's being wasted right now. NXT's Halloween Havoc event last weekend was apparently one of the weakest NXT TakeOver shows ever. Also, apparently, according to WrestleNomics, the median age of people that watch NXT is 66 years old. So that's interesting considering the clips I've seen of NXT, including The Rock's daughter's debut this week. It's very like cheesy kids themed stuff. Meanwhile, the median age of people watching are senior citizens. But yeah, there's definitely not as many young people watching wrestling, it seems. By the way, speaking of The Rock, his Black Adam, sorry, his movie opened just in the US at 67 million, which was a huge weekend for him. The only two movies that did better than that were the original Fast and Furious series that he did and The Mummy Returns. And apparently over half the movie tickets this past weekend were for that movie, 113 million total worldwide, as it also did 79.5 million outside the US. And you would think that with the number one movie star out there in the world, you would actually want to capitalize on that. And actually, maybe that would have built the daughter's debut to like be a huge thing, but maybe they didn't want to put that pressure on her. But like the daughter debuts the same week as Black Adams is the number one movie. You'd think you'd want to identify her as The Rock's daughter. And yeah, I understand the people that will say, well, there'll be less pressure on her if they don't do that. But it's not like the 80s or the 70s anymore, or even the 90s, where you could like hide if someone's the daughter or son. Because now with the internet, even before she debuted, everybody knew that The Rock's daughter was training. So it's not like a mystery. She's going to have that pressure on her no matter what. And as I said when I reviewed her debut, which is on the Hannibal TV, when she took her mask off, the crowd popped for her. And they're putting her with this corny heel group. So it's like the crowd wants to cheer her, but you're going to try and stuff her down everyone's face as a heel. Again, I would have suggested bringing her in as a face, and if it doesn't work, turn her heel. But don't start off going against the grain. Kevin Nash, his son apparently did not die on Scott Hall's birthday. The news just came out on Scott Hall's birthday. He actually died on October 19th from cardiac arrest due to a seizure, which Kevin Nash claimed had something to do with alcohol. It is like apparently I've watched clips of that podcast. I've never seen a full one. I hadn't seen one of his son. I tried to find one with his son after I heard the son died. And the only thing I could find was Kevin peeing in a bottle on the podcast and hear his son laughing at it in the background. But I never actually could find a clip of Kevin and his son. There was a fight between the two many years ago, I think when the son was 18, where they both ended up arrested. Somebody called the cops. But obviously their relationship grew closer after that. But it's interesting that Kevin said that he stopped drinking and the son stopped drinking, because it seemed like almost every clip of the podcast that I saw, there's some talk about Kevin recommending wine or drinking wine, or there's lots of alcohol talk on the podcast. So it's interesting to hear that suddenly they all stopped drinking, but it's possible. And yes, alcohol has horrible effects. Paul Levesque, Triple H, is back at work after recovering from COVID. Elimination Chamber will be at the Bell Center in Montreal, the first time WWE has come to Montreal in a while, because they've been going to Laval, which is a smaller town outside Montreal with a smaller arena, because they couldn't come close to filling the Bell Center for house shows. And even the last house shows they did at the Bell Center, it was a condensed setting. But apparently they're doing the Elimination Chamber February 18th and SmackDown February 17th. And yeah, it'll be the first pay-per-view in Montreal in 14 years. It did come out that WWE has officially canceled their day one pay-per-view that was going to be in Atlanta. Now Atlanta is getting a December 27th house show. And for the people that bought travel packages, they are now being offered to go to the house show instead of the pay-per-view. I don't know if that's worth traveling to. Shawn Michaels apparently said in a press conference that he never thought he'd be running NXT. And he made note that he screwed up at times as a wrestler. Doesn't want that for his generation. I did do a review of Shawn Michaels on the Logan Paul podcast. And one of the questions one of the guys asked, one of the hosts, because there's three hosts that asked, or co-hosts, I guess, asked Shawn was, could he see anyone going down the same path as him? Now they have pretty strict testing for drugs. So it's not like that. And yes, in the older days, the wrestlers were more wild and more partiers. I mean, that crossed over into my generation a little bit too, because people like me were on the same cards as guys like Honky Tonk Man and Brutus Beefcake and all these guys that were still living the 80s life. But like now, they're hiring people that have never worked the indies and have never worked territories like Puerto Rico or the UK and stuff, where you're not under like the WWE's corporate structure. And yeah, they're not having these issues with wrestlers anymore. But I think I'm not saying this is better, but when you had the wild wrestlers like Piper, Jake the Snake, and Ric Flair and stuff, they made for better characters. Now the characters are very boring inside and outside the ring overall, but they're healthier. The product is more boring, but the wrestlers are healthier and they're making more money. But there's less people overall making money in wrestling. But who cares, really? But there's less job for the people that would have been stars and were partiers. They will never have jobs, so they'll just be bums. Logan Paul was nominated for Creator of the Year for the YouTube Streamy Awards. John Cena is in a new movie called The Independent on Peacock. As far as AEW goes, it doesn't look like CM Punk is coming back. Apparently, a lot of the top wrestlers, including reportedly Chris Jericho, are saying they'll refuse to work with him if he comes back, and they feel that it's not worth bringing him back because he's a cancer to the locker room. They are working on a contract buyout with him right now. Omega and the Young Bucks were backstage this past week and are expected to be back soon. Apparently, Wrestling Inc. reported that Punk's dog was injured in the fight, and the backstage all-out fight that involved Punk, Omega, the Bucks, some guy named Ace Steel who was also fired. But I don't know if Ace Steel got a buyout. But they've all been suspended with pay up to this point. But Ace Steel was fired the other week, and it looks like CM Punk's not coming back because he doesn't really have any friends backstage from the sounds of it. AEW Rampage tonight is from the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. Tony Schiavone's son, Matt, has been hired as a producer, I guess, for AEW. Yes, AEW has also hired Matt Tavern, Mike Bennett, and Maria Kanellis from Ring of Honor, a company that pretty much went out of business. Let's hire the people that were so boring that they put a company out of business to our already inflated roster. Good for them, though. I mean, all of them, Bennett, Kanellis, and Tavern. Kanellis got the most hits on my channel out of their interviews that have appeared on this channel. But none of the three really got much in interest in the interviews that I posted on this channel of them. But I know Bennett and Kanellis have kids, so I'm glad that they're employed again. Apparently for the January 11th AEW show in LA, they did 3,818 tickets sold in the first day. Compare that to the last show they did 13,000 in the same day. So they sold about 10,000 less tickets in the first day this time in LA, which shows you that interest in AEW is really dying off. Willow Nightingale, 28, has signed a full-time contract. Thunder Rosa, who I did an interview with on this channel, and she actually sang in the interview, is going to return in January. Andrade is still being sent home by AEW. No news on if and when he'll appear again. Remember, he was complaining WWE wasn't using him right? Now he's sitting at home in AEW. So AEW is not necessarily this magical place. Miro found that too, which I forget now what his name was in WWE, but he was talking like he was going to be a big star in AEW, and he fell flat in AEW too. Dynamite did a 0.2 rating this week, and AEW has been advertised during NBA games. The Dynamite was recorded in Jacksonville, AEW's home, in front of 2,400 fans. NXT did the 0.15 rating. Raw did a 0.45 rating from Charlotte in front of 6,800 fans. Rampage did a 0.13 rating. This was actually taped as a separate event in Norfolk in front of 3,000 fans. SmackDown did a 0.5 rating in Toledo before 6,300 fans. Tales from the Territories did a 0.02 rating. Women of Wrestling did a 0.07 rating. So that's not bad at all. That's pretty good. Impact apparently has been purchasing commercial time on Raw and AEW on Wednesday, so Dynamite and Raw. But clearly it has not been helping their ratings. They've usually get a 0.01. In other news, the Patriot Dale Welks, who I have an interview with on this channel, he was a really nice guy. He was inducted into the University of South Carolina's Hall of Fame this week. He had a lot of pill and steroid issues and other drugs, served prison time, but he had turned his life around and he passed away at 59 from a heart attack. And he really hated the Honky Tonk Man and Tom Brady. Tom Brady basically uses to this day, I think, the Patriot gimmick on the independents, even though Dale Welks was the Patriot. And the Honky Tonk Man used to have his son dress up as the Patriot. So much as there's been a million doinks, the only good doink, in my opinion, was Matt Bourne. Seriously, all the other ones sucked. And like the only Patriot to me is Dale Welks. Billy Corgan has been discussing NWA possibly being a development promotion for WWE and would be interested in the show airing on Peacock, of course, because it would be publicity for him. And as I said, I admire him like funding the NWA, but if you look at the crowd where they tape, I mean, I've heard the crowds ranging from like 20 to 100, maybe sometimes more than 100, but the rent of that place alone would not be covered by 100 tickets, let alone the pay to all those wrestlers. So, and he's only airing on YouTube, and they don't really have a popular YouTube channel. I know they do pay-per-views and stuff on Fight here and there. But if Impact's pay-per-views are only getting like 1,000 to 1,500, I can't imagine NWA getting more than them. So, of course, it would be beneficial for Billy Corgan to be a developmental and be able to use the development wrestlers and not have to pay wrestlers. I know it's a tax write-off to him, though, so he probably doesn't care. He's a multimillionaire. AAA star Laredo Kid suffered a ruptured intestine at 35. Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva tomorrow night in a boxing match in Phoenix. Be interesting to see if Paul does better than Tito Ortiz did against Anderson Silva, who knocked out Ortiz very easily. Apparently, UFC is now saying John Jones is not, okay, maybe he is going to. Okay, so he's not going to headline the December 10th UFC show, but they're looking to have him fight in early 2023.